And for our final part of this 63rd edition of the Rolling Stone, seeing as it is Independence Day weekend, we're going to do something a little different this time around, because I know that a lot of the stories that we cover here on the Stone, they are not exactly the most uplifting, as it were. But and that's important, because we have to take the stories and the ideas that are thrown at us, and we have to parse them out, we have to dissect them, we have to see where they go wrong so that we can counterpunch them, and chart a path forward so that we can turn this boat around, so that we can actually celebrate the 4th of July again merrily. May that day come as soon as it can. So with that being said, we're doing something a little different. On the 1st of July, on the 1st of the month, the USA Today ran a story, headline, "Amid protests and a pandemic, what does it mean to be an American in 2020?" And of course, they shoved a whole bunch of graphs and polls and different data at all of us. They said, for example, that pride in being an American has fallen across the board in the country. Less people today are proud of being an American. Pride in being an American has even fallen in the Republican Party, so you know that that's bad. They said, well, what does it mean when someone says you look like an American? They cited a poll that said more people would say that Kate Middleton, who is a future queen of the United Kingdom, FYI, looks more American than Lucy Liu, the American actress, which means, of course, there's just another sign of racism and oppression and white superiority. They asked, what is a patriot? What does it mean to be patriotic? Was Colin Kaepernick really being a patriot when he kneeled down to protest the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance? They also quote a young 22-year-old activist named Moises Rodriguez Cruz, age 22, who says, what we really should celebrate is queer people, trans people, and black people, because this country was founded on colonization, people arriving on this land and stealing from indigenous people. And that story in USA Today, that is not just a one-hit wonder for this year. That is a common theme that is running through the media this 4th of July. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be patriotic? For example, The Atlantic told people in their weekly email that they should review an essay that was written last year in 2019 by Ibram X. Kendi, who is a black activist, and they quote in their email this part of his essay, where he said that resistance is not incompatible with patriotism. Ibram Kendi said, quote, we should be celebrating our disobedience, turbulence, insolence, and discontent about inequities and injustices in all forms. We should be celebrating our form of patriotism that they call unpatriotic, our historic struggle to extend power and freedom to every single American. And in all of that, I thought that it would be, in the midst of all of that, I thought that it would do us good to actually hear what it means to be an American from someone who lived the American experience when it was being created. This is a man named Hector St. John de Crevecoeur. Crevecoeur. He was a Frenchman. With a name like that, he would have to be French. But he immigrated to the United States, to New York actually, when it was still a colony. So before 1776, married a local woman named Mehitable Tippett, and he started writing about what it was like to be in America, what it was like to live in America, the people, the customs and traditions. And he wrote this specifically for people who were still in Europe. Because again, something like this, something like the American experience and the American experiment had never really happened before. Certainly not in the modern world, where 13 disunited, arguing, quarrelsome colonies had done the impossible and united and kicked off the rule of the home country. And not just the home country, but the greatest power of the modern world at that time, the British Empire. Nothing like that had ever been done before. And then they had declared themselves to be their own nation. They had declared themselves to be a republic. If you watched our regular On the Stone video, which unfortunately was posted very late this week on Wednesday, mea culpa, republic was a dirty word in the 18th century. Republics didn't work. It was ridiculous to even try one, especially for a landmass, for something as large as 13 united colonies. There was no way that was going to work. Hector St. John Crevecoeur, this is the environment that he's working in, and this is the environment that he wants to actually tell people in Europe, no, this actually is good, this is working, okay? And in 1782, one of the things he writes, one of the essays he writes is entitled, "What is an American?" And this is what he says, quote, this is Hector St. John de Crevecoeur. "We are a people of cultivators, scattered over an immense territory, communicating with each other by means of good roads and navigable rivers, united by the silken bands of mild government, all respecting the laws without dreading their power, because they are equitable. We are all animated with the spirit of an industry which is unfettered and unrestrained, because each person works for himself. If he travels through our rural districts, he views not the hostile castle and the haughty mansion contrasted with the clay-built hut and miserable cabin where cattle and men help to keep each other warm and dwell in meanness, smoke, and indigence. A pleasing uniformity of decent competence appears throughout our habitations. The meanest of our log houses is a dry and comfortable habitation. Lawyer or merchant are the fairest titles our towns afford. That of a farmer is the only appellation of the rural inhabitants of our country. It must take some time ere he can reconcile himself to our dictionary, which is but short in words of dignity and names of honor. There is not among them an esquire, saving the unlettered magistrate. There he sees a parson as simple as his flock, a farmer who does not riot on the labor of others. We have no princes for whom we toil, starve, and bleed. We are the most perfect society now existing in the world. Here, man is free as he ought to be, nor is this pleasing equality so transitory as many others are. Many ages will not see the shores of our great lakes replenished with inland nations, nor the unknown bounds of North America entirely peopled. Who can tell how far it extends? Who can tell the millions of men whom it will feed and contain? For no European foot has yet traveled half the extent of this mighty continent. What then is the American, this new man? He is either an European or the descendant of a European, hence the strange mixture of blood which you will find in no other country. I could point out to you a family whose grandfather was an Englishman, whose wife was Dutch, whose son married a Frenchwoman, and whose present 4 sons now have 4 wives of different nations. He is an American who, leaving behind him all his ancient prejudices and manners, receives new ones from the new mode of life he has embraced, the new government he obeys, and the new rank he holds. He becomes an American by being received in the broad lap of our great alma mater. Here individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men whose labors and posterity will one day cause great changes in the world. Americans are the Western pilgrims who are carrying along with them that great mass of arts, sciences, vigor, and industry which began long since in the East. They will finish the great cycle. The Americans were once scattered all over Europe. Here they are incorporated into one of the finest systems of population which has ever appeared, and which will hereafter become distinct by the power of the different climates they inhabit. The American ought therefore to love this country much better than that wherein either he or his forefathers were born. Here the rewards of his industry follow with equal steps the progress of his labor. His labor is founded on the basis of nature, self-interest. Can it want a stronger allurement? Wives and children who before in vain demand of him a morsel of bread, now fat and frolicsome, gladly help their father to clear those fields. Hence exuberant crops are to arise to feed and clothe them all, without any part being claimed by a despotic prince or a mighty lord. The American is a new man who acts upon new principles. He must therefore entertain new ideas and form new opinions. From involuntary idleness, servile dependence, penury, and useless labor, he has passed to toils of a very different nature, rewarded by ample subsistence. This is an American. That was, again, Hector St. John de Crevecoeur, writing in 1782. And I think that that pretty much should be the definition of an American, where you are free, equal, ordered liberty, free and ordered liberty, I should say, equal before the law and the throne of God, and where you are allowed to be industrious and to keep the fruits of your own labor. I think that that is a wonderful definition of being an American. And I love that someone like Hector St. John de Crevecoeur, someone who wasn't even naturally an American, was able to see the potential, to see the greatness that was already there in 1782. And it definitely gives one pause, because when a people are no longer able to talk like this, to understand this, to see that people can come together under universal or national principles, a mixture of the two often, but instead must be subdivided up into little groups, that society can't last. Hector St. John de Crevecoeur beautifully described what it is to be an American. And I think that that definition should be resurrected. Maybe then some of the madness that we see around us could be stifled. Gang, have a very merry and a very happy Independence Day. And I will talk to you all again soon. Ciao.